You expect betrayal to be an explosion, screaming and shattered glass. But for me, it was a laugh, a loud, beer-soaked guffaw on a Friday night. I sat frozen as my boyfriend told the table he had been rating me a 3 out of 10 in his group chat for months. The noise in the bar did not stop, but my world went silent. I did not leave in tears. I left doing the math. My name is Delilah Cook. I am 29 years old, living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and until 45 minutes ago, I was the kind of woman who believed that stability was the same thing as happiness. I thought love was supposed to be a quiet thing, a steady hum in the background of a busy life, like a refrigerator that keeps everything cool and preserved without you having to check on it constantly. I was wrong. The refrigerator was not humming. It was leaking poison gas, colorless and odorless, and I had been sleeping right next to it for 2 years. It is a Friday night at Juniper and Ash, the kind of downtown bar that smells of expensive bourbon, cedarwood, and the desperate energy of young professionals trying to prove they are having a good time. The lighting is warm and amber, designed to make everyone look 10% more attractive than they actually are. The music is a thick, rhythmic thrum that vibrates in the floorboards, loud enough that you have to lean in to hear the person next to you, which creates a false sense of intimacy. Laughter crisscrosses the room like an invisible spiderweb, sticky and trapping. I am sitting in a booth upholstered in distressed leather that probably cost more than my first car. Next to me is Bryce Harlan. Bryce, with his perfect teeth, his job in data analytics that he explains with a smug complexity, and his hand resting possessively on the back of my neck. Across from us are Logan and Trent, Bryce's college friends who never quite grew out of the fraternity mindset, and Paige, Trent's girlfriend. Paige is nice. She is the kind of girl who nods a lot and smiles when she does not understand the joke, because she is terrified of ruining the vibe. We are 3 rounds of drinks in. The condensation from my gin and tonic is pooling on the dark wood of the table. I am listening to Logan recount a story I have heard 4 times before. Feigning interest because that is what good girlfriends do. We support, we validate, we act as the audience for the endless, mediocre theater of our partners' lives. Then the conversation shifts. It pivots on a dime, sparked by something Trent saw on his phone. "Did you guys see that thread on Twitter?" Trent asks, his voice cutting through the bass of the music. He holds up his phone, screen glowing blue in the amber light. Some chick found out her guy was keeping a spreadsheet of their dates, rating them. Like, full-on analytics. Logan laughs, a sharp barking sound. That is dedication. I can barely remember to text back, let alone make a pivot table. Paige wrinkles her nose. "That is psychotic," she says, taking a sip of her wine. "Imagine reducing a person to a number. It is so dehumanizing." I nod in agreement. It does sound awful. It sounds like something a sociopath would do. I feel Bryce shift beside me. He's not nodding. He is grinning. It is a grin I know, usually reserved for when he lands a big client or beats his dad at golf. It is the grin of a winner who knows something the losers do not. Bryce takes a swig of his beer, sets the glass down with a heavy thud, and looks at the guys. He completely ignores Paige and me. We are just furniture in this moment. "Amateur hour," Bryce says, his voice booming slightly too loud, projecting for the table. "A spreadsheet is too much work. You just need a quick system." He pauses for effect. He wants them to ask. He is begging for the setup. What system? Logan asks. Taking the bait. Bryce chuckles. It starts low in his chest and bubbles up. He wraps his arm tighter around my shoulders, squeezing me like I am a prize he won at a county fair. Something he owns but does not necessarily value. I have been rating Delilah a 3 out of 10 in our guys' group chat for months, Bryce says. He laughs. He throws his head back and laughs. It is a wet, open-mouthed sound. He looks around the table, eyes shining, expecting a chorus of high fives. He expects the boys will be boys validation that has fueled him his entire life. But the laughter does not come. The table goes silent. It is a profound, heavy silence. It is the kind of silence that happens after a car crash. Right after the metal stops screaming and before the passengers start screaming, the music in the bar seems to drop away. The clinking of glasses at the next table sounds miles away. I sit there. I can feel the warmth of his arms still draped over me. My brain is trying to process the sentence syntax to make sure I heard it right. 3 out of 10. For months. Logan looks down at his drink, suddenly fascinated by the ice cubes. Trent opens his mouth and then closes it, his eyes darting to Paige. Paige looks at me. Her eyes are wide, horrified. She looks like she wants to reach across the table and cover my ears. But it is too late. The bullet is already in the brain. I do not move. I do not flinch. I do not burst into tears. I can feel the shockwave hitting my chest, a physical blow that knocks the wind out of me, but on the outside, I am marble. Bryce's laugh trails off when he realizes no one else is joining in. The grin falters. Just a fraction. He looks at me, then back at the guys. What he says, a defensive edge creeping into his tone. Come on. It is funny. I turn my head slowly to look at him. I see him. I really see him for the first time in 2 years. I see the pores on his nose. I see the slight redness in his eyes from the alcohol. I see the way his hairline is receding just a fraction of an inch on the left side. I see a stranger. 3, I say. My voice is steady. It sounds like it is coming from someone else. Someone standing 5 feet away. Bryce rolls his eyes, sensing the mood has soured but unwilling to admit defeat. Babe, do not make it a thing. It is just a number. It is a joke. For months. I repeat, I am not asking a question. I am stating a fact he just gave me. It is a running gag, he says, waving his hand dismissively. You know how we are. We roast each other. It is stupid. I look at the hand waving in the air, the hand I have held while walking through farmers' markets, the hand that I thought would one day put a ring on my finger. Now it just looks like a claw. Which month did it start, I ask? The question hangs in the air. Cold and clinical. I see Logan flinch. It is not the reaction of a wounded girlfriend. It is the reaction of an auditor finding a discrepancy in the books. Bryce blinks. He looks confused. He wanted me to cry. He wanted me to yell so he could call me crazy. He wanted me to make a scene so he could be the victim of an over-emotional woman, but I am not giving him that. I am giving him data analysis. Delilah, stop, he says, his voice dropping an octave, trying to regain control. You are embarrassing yourself. It is just guy talk. It is not that deep. Was it, may I ask, keeping my eyes locked on his, when we went to the coast for your birthday? Or was it June? When I nursed you through that stomach flu and cleaned your bathroom floor? Jesus Christ. Bryce hisses. You are ruining the night. Can you take a joke? 1 joke. 3 out of 10. I say again. I taste the numbers in my mouth. They taste like metal and bile. Paige speaks up, her voice trembling. Bryce, that is really messed up. Bryce snaps his head toward her. Stay out of it. Paige, you do not know the context. The context is that you are humiliating her. Paige says, gaining a little strength. I am sitting right here, Bryce says, throwing his hands up. I am sitting right next to her, if I hated her. Would I be here? Would I be buying her drinks? God, you women are so sensitive. He looks at me, expecting me to side with him against Paige. He expects me to smooth it over, to be the cool girl who can take a punch and keep smiling. He expects me to apologize for making things awkward. I look at the glass in front of me. The ice has melted. The drink is watered down. It is ruined. Everything is ruined. But strangely, I feel calm. It is the calm of a surgeon realizing the limb cannot be saved and must be amputated. There is no point in arguing with the gangrene. You just cut. I reach for my purse on the floor. The movement catches Bryce's eye. Where are you going? He asks. Do not be dramatic. Delilah, sit down. I ignore him. I open my wallet. I see the cash inside. I count it out in my head. My drink was $14. The shared appetizers were maybe $12 a person. I pull out 2 $20 bills, $40. I place the money on the sticky table. I smooth the bills out flat with the palm of my hand. I take a moment to ensure they are perfectly aligned with the edge of the wood. That covers my drink. I say, my voice low and clear. And the tip, and a little extra for the inconvenience of having to listen to you. Bryce stares at the money. He looks at it like it is an alien artifact. You are walking out over a joke. You are going to make me explain this to everyone. There is nothing to explain. Bryce, I say. I slide out of the booth. I stand up. My legs feel steady, stronger than they have in years. If you walk out that door, Bryce says, his voice raising, trying to intimidate me, do not expect me to come running after you. I am not playing games. I look down at him one last time. He looks small. He looks like a child who broke a toy and is mad that the toy won't work anymore. I know you won't. I say, you have a group chat to update. I turn around. I do not look at Paige, though I can feel her eyes on me. I do not look at Logan or Trent. I focus on the exit sign glowing red above the heavy wooden door. I walk. I can hear Bryce sputtering behind me. Unbelievable. She is actually leaving. Can you believe that total overreaction? She is crazy. Man, I told you. I keep walking. I weave through the crowd of laughing people. The happy couples. The first dates. The people who are not currently being rated like livestock by the person they love. I push open the heavy door and step out into the cool night air of Raleigh. The silence of the street rushes in to meet me. It is not empty. It is clean. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not give him the satisfaction of a scene. He rated me a 3 out of 10. I stand on the sidewalk, the bass from the bar thumping mutedly against the brick wall behind me. I take a deep breath. The date was Friday, October 24th. I check my watch. It is 10:42 p.m., and the war has just begun. The heavy door of juniper and ash swung shut behind me, severing the connection between the warm, noisy bar and the crisp October air of Raleigh. The silence of the street was sudden, a physical drop in pressure that made my ears pop. I did not stop walking. My heels clicked against the pavement with a rhythm that felt like a countdown. I made it perhaps 20 feet before the door opened again. I heard the scuff of dress shoes on concrete, the heavy, impatient jog of someone who feels inconvenienced. Delilah, hey, stop, don't be like this. Bryce's hand clamped around my upper arm. It was not a violent grab. Not exactly. It was the grip of ownership. It was the way a man holds a steering wheel when he is annoyed at traffic, or the way he grabs his phone when he thinks he has lost it. It was a gesture that said, "You are mine, and you are drifting out of your assigned lane." I stopped. I did not rip my arm away. I did not scream. I simply rotated my shoulder, a precise, calculated movement that broke his hold without the theatrics of a struggle. I turned to face him. Under the harsh white light of a street lamp, Bryce looked different than he had inside. The amber glow of the bar had been forgiving. Out here, the shadows under his eyes were stark, and the irritation in his jaw was visible. He did not look sorry. He looked like a parent whose toddler had just thrown a tantrum in a grocery store. "You are making a scene," he hissed, glancing back at the bar door as if the paparazzi were waiting for us. Walking out on the bill. Leaving the guys there. Do you have any idea how high maintenance that makes you look? I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the man I had spent 2 years planning a future with. I saw the man I had introduced to my parents. I saw the man whose laundry I folded because he claimed he did not know how to separate colors. 3 out of 10, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the quiet street, it sounded like a gunshot. Based on what? Bryce sighed, running a hand through his hair. He looked at the sky, then at his watch, then back at me. He was weighing his options: lie, deflect, or double down. Bryce Harlan always doubled down. He prided himself on being a logical thinker, a man of data and hard truths. It is a comprehensive metric. Delilah, he said, his tone shifting into that condescending register he used when explaining cryptocurrency to his mother. We built a weighted system. It is not personal. It is just data. Based on what? I repeated. I needed to hear it. I needed the autopsy report before I could declare the time of death. He crossed his arms. Leaning back slightly, he decided to treat this like a performance review. Fine, he said. You want the breakdown? Here is the breakdown. Financials. You are a 29-year-old nurse at a rehab center. You make decent money, sure, but you are capped. You have no equity. You have no side hustle. In the Raleigh market, that is a 4 at best. I stared at him. I spent my days helping people relearn how to walk, how to speak, how to live after strokes and accidents. I wiped tears and bodily fluids. I held the hands of dying grandmothers so they would not be alone. To Bryce, this was just a lack of equity. Go on, I said. Aesthetics, he continued, ticking a finger. You are pretty, obviously, but you do not put in the effort Paige does. You wear scrubs 5 days a week. You stopped getting those lash extensions I liked 6 months ago. You have settled. That is a solid 5, maybe a 6 on a good hair day, but the variance pulls it down. Income, aesthetics, I listed, memorizing the categories. Intimacy, he said, lowering his voice slightly but not softening it. Let's be real. Delilah, it has been vanilla for a year. You are tired all the time. You are not adventurous. In the group chat, we value enthusiasm. You are operating at a baseline efficiency. That is a 3. He was talking about our private life, the moments where I felt most vulnerable, as if he were grading a faulty appliance on Amazon. And social capital, he finished. That is the big one. When I bring you to events, you are quiet. You do not network. You do not elevate my brand. You are just there. A partner is supposed to be a multiplier. Delilah, you are a constant. Constants do not help you scale. He looked at me, waiting for me to understand. Waiting for me to nod and say, you are right. Bryce, I will work harder to be a multiplier. So, he concluded, shrugging, you average it all out. Apply the proprietary weighting formula we came up with. And yeah, you are currently sitting at a 3.2, which rounds down to a 3. It is math. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not heartbreak. It was the feeling of a heavy weight being lifted, the sudden lightness of realizing you have been carrying a backpack full of rocks for no reason. A 3, I said. Don't do that face, Bryce snapped, his patience fraying. Don't overreact. The grading scale is tough. It is supposed to be rigorous. A 7 is basically a supermodel with a trust fund. Being a 3 does not mean you are trash. It just means you are market average. You are a fixer-upper. The grading scale is tough. That was the line. That was the moment the last thread connected to my heart snapped. He did not see his cruelty as cruelty. He saw it as rigor. He saw my humiliation as a necessary audit. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Bryce asked, his eyes narrowing. Are you calling an Uber good? Go home. Cool off. I will tell the guys you had a migraine. We can talk about your improvement plan tomorrow. I did not look at him. I unlocked my screen. The blue light illuminated my face. I opened Instagram. I swiped right to the story camera. I did not take a picture of him. I did not take a picture of myself. I took a picture of the empty pavement, the oil stains and the cracks in the concrete illuminated by the street lamp. It was bleak and empty, just like the space where my love for him used to be. My thumbs moved fast. I did not tremble. I typed single again. Apparently I am a 3 out of 10. Being single feels like a 10 out of 10. I searched for his handle. Bryce_Harlan. I tagged him. I made the tag invisible, hiding it in the corner, but the notification would still hit him. It would hit him hard. I pressed post. Delilah. Bryce stepped closer, invading my space. Put the phone away. You're acting like a child. Then, it happened. Bzzzt. The sound came from the pocket of his beige chinos. Bzzzt. Bzzzt. Bryce frowned. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He glanced at the screen. I watched his face. I watched the arrogance drain out of him like water from a cracked basin. I watched his brow furrow. Then his eyes widen. I watched his jaw go slack. "What did you do?" he whispered. He looked up at me, and for the first time, the data analyst looked unable to compute the variable standing in front of him. You posted that." "It is just a status update," I said, my voice mimicking his earlier indifference. "I am just updating the market on my availability." "Take it down," he said. His voice rose, sharp and panicked. "Delilah, take it down right now. My boss follows me. My mom follows me. The guys. Jesus. Delilah, take it down." "No," I said. "You are embarrassing me," he shouted, stepping toward me aggressively. "You are making me look like an idiot." "I am not making you look like anything. Bryce," I said calmly, "I am just providing the data. You said you liked data." I turned my back on him. I began to walk down the street, away from the bar, away from him. "Delilah," he yelled, "if you walk away, we are done. Do you hear me? I am not chasing a 3. You are lucky I was even with you." I kept walking. I did not run. I did not look back. I raised my hand in a lazy wave, not a goodbye, but a dismissal. I walked 4 blocks before I called a car. I sat in the back of the generic sedan, watching the city lights blur past. The driver asked if I had a good night. I told him it was efficient. When I got back to my apartment, the silence was different. Usually, the apartment felt empty when Bryce wasn't there. I would wait for his text, wait for the sound of his key in the lock. Tonight, the apartment felt full. It felt occupied by me. I took off my heels. I scrubbed my face. I put on my oversized pajamas, the ones Bryce hated, because they were unflattering. I sat on my couch and stared at the wall. My phone, which I had placed face down on the coffee table, began to vibrate. It buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it started a continuous, angry dance across the wood, rattling against a coaster. I did not pick it up. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I drank it slowly. I went to bed. I thought I would not sleep. I thought I would lie there and replay every cruelty he had listed. I thought I would obsess over my income, my hair, my quietness. But the exhaustion that took me was absolute. It was the deep, dreamless sleep of a soldier who has finally been discharged. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the blinds. It was Saturday morning. The world outside was awake. I reached for my phone. The lock screen was a wall of white notifications. It looked like a glitched code. 47 missed calls from Bryce, 12 missed calls from Logan, 8 missed calls from Trent, 114 text messages, Instagram, 99 plus notifications. I sat up, propping myself against the headboard. I took a breath and unlocked the phone. I did not open Instagram yet. I went straight to the messages from Bryce. I wanted to see the anatomy of his panic. I wanted to see the progression. 11:03 p.m. You are being a psycho. Delete it. 11:05 p.m. Delilah, seriously, this isn't funny. My phone is blowing up. 11:15 p.m. Pick up the phone. Stop acting like a victim. 11:30 p.m. Okay, look, I am sorry if the rating hurt your feelings. It was just guy talk. I didn't mean it like that. Can we talk 11:42 p.m.? You are ruining my reputation over a joke. You are so selfish. 12:10 a.m. Everyone is laughing at me because of you. I hope you are happy. 12:45 a.m. If you don't take it down by morning, we are done. I mean it. I am blocking you. 1:20 a.m. Delilah, please. My cousin just screenshotted it and sent it to the family group chat. Please. 2:00 a.m. You are a bitch. A vindictive, average, 3 out of 10 bitch. 3:15 a.m. I love you. Why are you doing this? I read them all. I read them chronologically. It was fascinating. It was a perfect case study in narcissism. There was no concern for me in any of those messages. There was no realization that he had hurt a human being. There was only fear for his own image, followed by rage that he could not control the narrative. He had tried to command me. Then he had tried to gaslight me. Then he had tried to bargain. Then he had tried to insult me. And finally, in the darkest hour of the night, he had tried to use love as a manipulation tactic. I did not reply. The little cursor blinked in the text box, urging me to say something, to defend myself, to argue, but I knew something Bryce didn't. I knew that silence was louder than anything I could type. Silence was a mirror. The longer I stayed quiet, the more he would scream at his own reflection. I did not block him, not yet. Blocking him would be mercy. It would stop the flow of information. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to see how far he would go. I wanted to see the face he wore when he thought no one was watching, the face that was currently unraveling in my inbox. A new notification popped up at the top of the screen. It wasn't from Bryce. It wasn't from his friends. It was an Instagram DM request from a user named Mason_Reed88. I recognized the name. He was one of the guys in Bryce's broader circle, the one who usually skipped the bar nights because he had a night shift or a sick mom. He was in the group chat, but he was rarely active. I opened the request. Mason_Reed88. Hey Delilah, I saw your story. I know you are probably flooded right now, but you need to know something. It is not just a joke. He has screenshots. He has kept everything. Prepare yourself. My finger hovered over the screen. The coldness in my chest, which had started last night, began to freeze into ice. I had thought the 3 out of 10 was the worst of it. I thought that was the bottom of the barrel. I was wrong. I was standing on a trap door, and the latch was about to give way. I set the phone down on the duvet. I stood up and walked to the window. Raleigh looked the same as it always did: green trees, brick buildings, blue sky. But it wasn't the same. The filter had been removed. I was not a girlfriend anymore. I was a whistleblower, and I had work to do. I stared at the screen. The name Mason Reed sat there, a digital ghost from the periphery of my life. I knew him as the guy who sometimes tagged along to Topgolf, the one who drank seltzer because he was the designated driver, the one who never really laughed at Bryce's louder jokes but never stopped them either. I typed back. My thumbs felt heavy, like I was moving them through water. Delilah. What do you mean? Prepare myself. The 3 dots of his typing bubble appeared instantly. They pulsed, rhythmic and hypnotic. Then they vanished. Then they appeared again. He was writing, deleting, rewriting. Mason Bryce deletes his tracks. He has an auto-delete timer on the main chat now. But I have been archiving it. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew this would happen eventually. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning in my apartment. It was the chill of realizing I had been under surveillance, not by a camera, but by a collective consciousness of men who I thought were my friends. Delilah. Send it. Mason. Are you sure? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It is not just the rating. Delilah. It is the commentary. Delilah. Send everything. I waited. The seconds stretched out. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the distant sound of traffic on Glenwood Avenue. My phone felt hot in my hand, the battery warming up as it processed the incoming data. Then, the images started to load. They did not come as a single file. They came as a barrage, a stream of screenshots populating my chat window one by one. The timestamps were visible at the top of each image. Some were from last week, some were from 6 months ago, some were from the very beginning of our relationship. The first thing I noticed was the name of the group chat thread in the screenshot. It wasn't called The Boys or Fantasy Football. It was titled Calibration Delilah C. I stared at the words, calibration, as if I were a piece of machinery that needed to be fine-tuned. As if I were a rifle scope that was slightly off-center. It was clinical. It was detached. It was the language of an engineer diagnosing a faulty circuit, not a man discussing the woman he slept next to. I tapped the first image to expand it. It was dated 4 months ago, a Tuesday. I remembered that Tuesday. It was the day I had come home exhausted from Silver Pine Recovery Center after a 12-hour shift. We had a patient, a 19-year-old boy who had been paralyzed in a motocross accident, who had finally moved his big toe after weeks of nothing. I had cried in the break room from relief. I had come home and told Bryce about it, feeling like I had witnessed a miracle. In the screenshot, Bryce wrote, "She is crying about work again. Honestly, it is exhausting. She acts like she is saving the world. It is a rehab center, not the ER. She is basically a glorified babysitter for people who drove drunk or broke their necks doing stupid things." Logan had replied, "Zero ambition." That is the problem with nurses. They think care is a currency. It does not scale. Bryce: "Exactly. She has no equity in the place. She is just labor. I tried to explain to her that she should move into admin or sales. But she gave me this speech about patient connection. It is cute, but it does not pay for a Tesla. That is why she is a 3 on the career axis. No growth mindset." I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking. I thought about the 19-year-old boy. I thought about holding his mother's hand while she prayed. I thought about the sweat on my back as I helped lift patients who could not lift themselves. To Bryce, my compassion was a defect. My dedication was a lack of ambition. He didn't just look down on my job. He looked down on the very core of who I was. He saw my empathy as a weakness that lowered my market value. I swiped to the next image. This one was older. 8 months ago. Bryce heads up. The weekend trip is canceled. Her mom is having some health scare. A biopsy or something. Trent bummer. Is it serious, Bryce? Who knows? She is spiraling. You know how she gets. She needs constant validation. It is classic attachment issues. Her dad left when she was 10. So now every time something goes wrong, she clings. It is suffocating. I'm going to have to play the supportive boyfriend role all weekend. Goodbye, golf. Trent gif of a man rolling his eyes. Bryce Mimi text over a photo of a crying woman. "Please don't leave me. I have daddy issues." I felt the bile rise in my throat. I remembered that weekend. My mother had found a lump. I was terrified. I was 28 years old, but I felt like a scared little girl. Bryce had held me. He had brought me tea. He had told me, "I am here for you. Baby, we will get through this." And while he was holding me with one hand, he was typing with the other, turning my terror into a punchline for his friends. He wasn't comforting me. He was performing. It was not the applause of celebration. It was the applause of agreement. It was the sound of a jury delivering a guilty verdict. They were validating the logic. They were looking at the spreadsheet, looking at the DNA, and nodding, "Yes, the math adds up. Yes, cut the loss." I stood there, paralyzed. The betrayal was so absolute, so swift, that my brain could not process it. 10 minutes ago, I was their daughter. Now, I was a bad investment. There was no screaming match. There were no tears. There was just a business decision, executed with brutal efficiency in front of witnesses. They had brought an audience to ensure that the severance was public, that the narrative was set before I could even open my mouth. "We are not unreasonable," my father said, closing the dossier with a finality that echoed in the room. "We are not throwing you out on the street without notice." He pointed a finger toward the mudroom door, near the garage entrance where I had come in. But then, I swiped to the last screenshot Mason had sent. It was recent, 2 weeks ago. It was a photo taken surreptitiously. It was blurry, shot from under a table or behind a menu. It showed a woman sitting across from Bryce. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a glass of wine in her hand. She was wearing a sharp black blazer and diamond earrings. It was Sienna Vale. Sienna was a project manager at Bryce's firm. I had met her twice at company holiday parties. She was sharp, ambitious, and undeniably beautiful in a polished, corporate way. She was everything Bryce claimed I wasn't, under the photo. Bryce had written, "Now this. This is the gold standard. Just had a strategy lunch with Sienna. Logan, she is out of your league. Bro. Bryce. For now, she is with that architect guy, Carter. But I am sensing cracks. She laughed at every joke I made today. She touched my arm 3 times. I am tracking the metrics. Trent. What is the rating? Bryce 9 out of 10. Easy. High income, high status, takes care of herself. If she was single, I would have a very hard time behaving myself. Honestly, if the opportunity opens up. I am making the trade. Delilah is a placeholder. Sienna is the destination. I dropped the phone. It hit the duvet with a soft thud. But the impact shattered something inside me. A placeholder. That was the word. That was the key to the entire cipher. It wasn't that I was failing to be a good girlfriend. It wasn't that I needed to work harder, or dress better, or earn more money. I could have become the CEO of the hospital. I could have looked like a supermodel. And it wouldn't have mattered. He wasn't rating me to help me improve. He was rating me to justify his exit strategy. He was building a case. He was collecting data points to prove to himself and his friends that I was disposable, so that when he finally cheated on me or dumped me for Sienna, he could say, well, the data supported the decision. She was only a 3. It was a system. It was a cold, calculated, dehumanizing system designed to strip me of my dignity while he scouted for an upgrade. He was living with me, sleeping with me, eating my food, and letting me love him, all while actively interviewing my replacement. I looked at the phone again. The screen had gone dark. I picked it up. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. The tears that had threatened to fall earlier were gone, evaporated by the sheer heat of my rage. I wasn't sad anymore. I was a witness, and I had the evidence. I did not text Mason back immediately. I went to my laptop. I opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it The Audit. I opened the chat with Mason on the desktop app. I began to download every single image. I saved them. I renamed them by date and subject. June 12th, 2025. _work, _mockery.jpg, August 20th, 2025, _mom_biopsy, _insult.jpg, October 10th, 2025, _Sienna, _veil, _9out10.jpg. I created a backup. I saved it to a cloud drive. I saved another copy to a USB stick I kept in my desk drawer. I was operating on autopilot, my movements precise and efficient. I was doing exactly what Bryce said I couldn't do. I was showing ambition. I was showing focus. I was scaling my operation. When the last file was saved, I sat back in my chair. The apartment was silent. But the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was charged. It was the silence of a courtroom before the verdict is read. I looked at the screenshot of Sienna Vale again. 9 out of 10. And then I looked at the comment about her boyfriend. Carter, the architect, the man Bryce called a loser, in a later text I had just archived. I wondered if Carter knew he was dating a 9. I wondered if he knew his girlfriend was having strategy lunches, where she touched another man's arm 3 times. I wondered if Carter liked Data as much as Bryce did. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Mason. Delilah, thank you. I have everything. Mason. What are you going to do, Delilah? I am going to finish the calibration. I closed the laptop. The morning sun was bright and harsh, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I felt strange. I felt powerful. Bryce had rated me a 3 because he thought I was weak. He thought I was safe. He thought I was a constant who would never disrupt his life. He had forgotten the one thing about constants. They are reliable. And right now, I was going to be the most reliable source of truth he had ever encountered. The phone buzzed again. Another text from Bryce. Bryce. Good morning. Are you done throwing your tantrum? I am coming over. We need to talk about your behavior. I stared at the message. My behavior. I didn't reply. I simply stood up, went to the bathroom, and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see a 3. I didn't see a 10. I saw a woman who was done being graded. I walked back to the living room and sat down to wait. But I wasn't just waiting for Bryce. I was waiting for the right moment to introduce the world to his methodology. If he wanted to treat people like numbers, I would make sure the math added up. And the first variable I needed to solve for wasn't Bryce. It was Sienna. I sat cross-legged on my beige sofa, the laptop burning a warm rectangle onto my thighs. The folder labeled The Audit was open. It contained 43 screenshots, 43 instances of Bryce Harlan and his friends dissecting my humanity like frogs in a biology class. I knew how the internet worked. If I dumped everything at once, it would be too much noise. People would scroll past. They would see a wall of text and think drama. I did not want drama. I wanted clarity. I needed to curate the narrative so that the conclusion was unavoidable. I opened a photo editing app. I selected the highlighter tool and switched the color to black. I started with the screenshot about my job. She is basically a glorified babysitter. I blacked out Logan's last name. I blacked out Trent's profile picture. I left Bryce's name and photo clearly visible. I wanted the focus to be surgical. Next, I pulled up the screenshot from the weekend of my mother's biopsy. Classic attachment issues. Please don't leave me. I have daddy issues. I stared at the image. My finger hovered over the trackpad. This was personal. This was my mother. This was the moment I had sat in a hospital waiting room, shaking, while he was texting his friends that my grief was an inconvenience to his golf game. I did not redact a single word of his text. I only redacted the timestamp and the battery percentage at the top. Finally, I chose the photo of Sienna Vale. If she was single, I would have a very hard time behaving myself. Delilah is a placeholder. I used the black marker to cover Sienna's eyes. She was not the villain here. Not yet. She was just another data point in his spreadsheet. I covered her face, but I left the glass of wine and her distinct manicured hand visible. I left Bryce's comment about the trade fully exposed. 3 images. One attacked my career. One attacked my family trauma. One attacked my loyalty. I opened Instagram. I did not write a long caption. I did not use a crying emoji. I did not use hashtags like cheater or heartbreak. I wrote a single sentence. He said I was a 3 out of 10 because I lacked ambition. Here is the data he used to make that decision. I uploaded the 3 images as a carousel. I pressed share. The blue bar zipped across the top of the screen. Posted. I put the phone down on the coffee table. The screen went black. The room was silent. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. The algorithm was digesting the content. It was sniffing the metadata, deciding who needed to see this. Then, the first notification lit up the dark glass. Sarah Jenkins liked your post. Sarah was a girl I went to high school with. We hadn't spoken in 6 years. Then another. Maddie_blue commented, "Oh my God, Delilah, is this real?" Then 5 more. Katie_R. I am shaking reading this. The biopsy comment. Are you kidding me? J_Doe_99. This guy is a monster. Who is he? The phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it buzzed twice in rapid succession. I picked it up. 20 likes. 50 likes. I went to the kitchen to make coffee. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of pulling a trigger I couldn't unpull. When I came back, the phone had slid 2 inches across the table from the force of its own vibration. 300 likes. I unlocked the screen. The comments were no longer from people I knew. User 882. The placeholder comment made me gag. Men like this deserve to be alone forever. Raleigh_girl. Wait, I know this guy. Doesn't he work at Northbridge Pizza_rat_queen? The audacity to rate a nurse a 3 while he probably sends emails for a living. The math isn't mathing. It was happening. It was escaping the containment field of my personal circle and bleeding into the general population of Raleigh. And then, the algorithm took the wheel. An hour later, a friend texted me a link. Check TikTok. Right now? I clicked the link. It opened a video from a user I had never met. A girl with bright pink hair and a headset microphone. She was using the green screen effect, with my screenshots floating behind her head. The automated text-to-speech voice that cheerful, robotic female voice read the caption, "When your boyfriend rates you a 3 out of 10 for months and you find the receipts." The girl in the video pointed at the screenshot of the biopsy comment. "Ladies," she said, her voice sharp and fast, "look at this. Look at the date. She is worried about her mom having cancer, and he is worried about his golf handicap. This isn't just a bad boyfriend. This is a sociopath with a smartphone." I looked at the view count on the video. It had been up for 40 minutes. It had 112,000 views. I refreshed the page. 150,000. It was climbing vertically. It wasn't a slope, it was a cliff. The comments on the TikTok video were a blur of rage and recognition. I dated a Bryce. They all talk like this. My ex had a ranking for my friends. I thought it was a joke. It is never a joke. The way he talks about scaling a relationship, he thinks he is the main character and she is just an NPC. I went back to Instagram. My follower count was ticking up like a stopwatch. People were finding me from the TikTok. They were coming to see the source material. I checked Bryce's profile. I clicked on his name and the tag I had created the night before. User not found. He had deactivated. He had pulled the plug. The man who lived for data, for visibility, for social capital, had vanished into the ether. He had realized that the market forces he loved so much had turned against him. He was witnessing a crash, and he was the stock that was plummeting. But the internet is not a whiteboard. You cannot erase it. Screenshots of his profile, his smug headshot, his bio that read, data-driven, disruptor. Coffee enthusiast were already circulating in the comment sections. People were archiving him faster than he could delete himself. My phone rang. It wasn't Bryce. It was Logan. I stared at the name. Logan T. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then a text came through. Logan D. Hey, I saw the post. Look, I know you are mad at Bryce, and you should be, but you didn't black out my handle in the second slide. People are DMing me death threats. I didn't say the biopsy thing. That was all him. Can you please clarify that I have a job interview next week? I read it twice. I have a job interview next week. He wasn't sorry that they had mocked my mother. He wasn't sorry that they had reduced me to a number. He was sorry that the blast radius was wider than he expected. He was worried about his own metrics. I did not reply. 2 minutes later, a message from Trent. Trent Delilah. This is getting out of hand. Paige is freaking out because people are finding her profile through mine. We were just blowing off steam. It was private. You are violating our privacy by posting this. Privacy. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. They had discussed the intimate details of my body, my family, and my future in a group chat with 4 other men. But I was the one violating privacy. I swiped the notification away. The view count on the TikTok video hit 600,000. Then, a new notification appeared on Instagram. A direct message request. It was from Paige. I hesitated. Paige was Trent's girlfriend. She was the one who had looked at me with pity in the bar. She was the one who had said, "That is dehumanizing." I opened the message. Paige Delilah, I am not going to ask you to take it down. Trent wants me to, but I won't. You did the right thing. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Paige, but you need to know something. I saw Trent's phone. He's trying to scrub everything right now. But I took a picture of his screen before he changed his passcode. 3 typing dots appeared. They danced for a long time. Paige. They do this to everyone. It is not just you, and it is not just random texts. Paige sent a photo. I tapped the image to enlarge it. It was a photo of a laptop screen. On the screen was a Google sheet. The spreadsheet was complex. It had color-coded columns. It had formulas. It was a masterpiece of neurotic, misogynistic organization. But what stopped my heart were the tabs at the bottom of the sheet. Tab 1, Current Assets. Girlfriends. Tab 2, Depreciating Assets. Exes. Tab 3, Prospects. Crush List. Tab 4, External Validation. Friends. GFs. I zoomed in on the 4th tab. External Validation. My name was there, but so was Paige's. I saw my row. Delilah C. Rating 3.0 notes. Low maintenance. High emotional need. Good for stability. Bad for growth. Then I looked at Paige's row. Paige M. Rating 7.5 notes. High aesthetic value. Annoying laugh. Trent needs to optimize her wardrobe. I felt sick. Physically sick. They weren't just rating their own partners. They were rating each other's partners. They were trading us like baseball cards. They were comparing our stats. They were discussing how to optimize us. It was a league, a fantasy league where the players were women who thought they were in love. I looked at the number of rows. There were dozens. Names I recognized. Names of girls they had dated in college. Names of girls they worked with. And in the Prospects tab, I saw Sienna Vale's name. Status pending acquisition. Target rating 9.0 strategy, isolate from current partner. Isolate from current partner. That wasn't a rating. That was a battle plan. My phone was still buzzing with likes and comments. The TikTok video had just crossed 1 million views. The world was angry about the 3 out of 10 comment. They were angry about the bad boyfriend. But they didn't know. They didn't know about the spreadsheet. They didn't know that this wasn't just a bad boyfriend. It was an institution. I saved Paige's photo. I saved it to the audit folder. I texted Paige back. Delilah. Thank you. Are you safe, Paige? I am at my sister's. I packed a bag while Trent was in the shower screaming at Logan on the phone. I am done. Delilah. I saw what they wrote about me. Annoying laugh. Delilah. Your laugh is beautiful. Paige burned them down. I looked at the screen. The viral storm was raging outside, a hurricane of pixels and noise. But inside my apartment, the air was still and cold. I had the map now. I had the blueprint of the entire operation. Bryce thought he could delete his Instagram and hide. He thought if he stayed quiet, the news cycle would move on to the next scandal in 24 hours. He thought this was just a bad PR day. He was wrong. I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I was looking for the structural integrity of his entire life. And I had just found the demolition switch. The sun was setting on Saturday, casting long, bruised shadows across my living room floor. My phone, plugged into the charger because the constant stream of notifications was draining the battery faster than it could replenish. Lit up again. This time, it wasn't a comment. It wasn't a like. It wasn't a threat from Bryce's friends. It was a direct message on Instagram from a private account. Carter_Win_Arch. We need to talk. I stared at the name, Carter Wynn, the architect, the man Bryce had called a loser in the group chat, the man who was currently dating Sienna Vale, the woman Bryce had rated a 9 out of 10 and marked as pending acquisition. I accepted the request. Delilah. Who is this Carter? You know who I am. You posted a photo where your ex talked about my girlfriend. I recognized the date of the lunch. Sienna told me she was at a site visit that day. My stomach dropped. I had redacted Sienna's eyes. I had tried to protect her identity because I thought she was an unwitting pawn, but in Raleigh, circles are small, and lies, no matter how carefully constructed, always leave a paper trail. Delilah. I am sorry you had to find out this way. Carter, I need to know the timeline. How long has he been pursuing her? His tone was calm, too calm. It was the flat, affectless tone of a man who is trying to keep his hands from shaking while he types. I went back to the audit folder. I found the screenshots that mentioned Sienna. There were more than I had posted. There were mentions of accidental run-ins at coffee shops near her office. There were notes about her favorite wine. There was a strategy breakdown of how to undermine her relationship with Carter by planting seeds of doubt about his financial stability. Delilah. It goes back 3 months, maybe 4. Carter. Send me everything. Please. I hesitated. This wasn't my relationship. I was blowing up my own life. But did I have the right to blow up his? Then I remembered the spreadsheet. I remembered the tab labeled Strategy Isolate from Current Partner. Bryce wasn't just flirting, he was hunting, and Carter was the prey he intended to starve out. I attached the files. I hit send. For 20 minutes, there was silence. I watched the dust motes dance in the dying light. I imagined what was happening on the other side of the screen. I imagined a conversation in a sleek, modern apartment, the kind an architect would live in. I imagined the air turning cold. Then, my phone buzzed. Carter. She admitted to the lunches. She said it was networking. She said Bryce was just a mentor figure who could help her navigate office politics. Delilah. Do you believe her? Carter, she isn't mad that he wrote those things. Delilah. She isn't mad that he rated her a 9 or called her an acquisition. She is mad at me. She is mad that I looked at her phone to confirm the dates. She said I invaded her privacy. I closed my eyes. I felt a wave of nausea. Delilah deflection. It is the first play in their book. Carter, she is worried about her reputation at work if this gets out. She isn't worried about us. She isn't worried about the fact that she lied to me for months. She is just annoyed, like I am an obstacle to her career management. I read his words and felt a terrifying kinship. It was the same coldness I had seen in Bryce, the same ability to compartmentalize human beings into assets and liabilities. Carter wasn't a partner to Sienna anymore. He was a liability because he had discovered the truth. Carter, thank you. Delilah. I needed to see it in black and white. I felt crazy for suspecting it. Now I know I am not. I put the phone down. Collateral damage. That is what they call it in war. Carter was innocent. He hadn't raided anyone. He hadn't made a spreadsheet, but the shrapnel from Bryce's explosion had hit him anyway. I turned back to my laptop. The viral firestorm was no longer contained to TikTok and Instagram. It had jumped species. It was now on LinkedIn. Someone, a user named corporate_accountability_watch, had found Bryce's LinkedIn profile before he deleted it. They had screenshotted a post he made 2 weeks ago. The post was a photo of Bryce standing at a podium, looking earnest and visionary. The caption read, "True leadership is about integrity. It is about transparency. It is about treating every team member with the same respect you would treat a CEO. Leadership, integrity, growth. Mindset." The comments under the screenshot were brutal. User 1, does treating every team member with respect include rating your girlfriend a 3 out of 10 in a spreadsheet asking for a friend? User 2, this aged like milk left in a hot car. User 3. Northbridge, metrics. Is this the kind of culture you cultivate? Your VP of Analytics seems to have a very interesting system for personnel evaluation. They were tagging his company. They were tagging his boss. They were tagging the HR department. I felt a twinge of panic. I hadn't asked for this. I hadn't told anyone to go after his job. I just wanted to expose the lie. But the internet is a mob, and a mob does not do nuance. A mob wants a head on a pike. I started getting DMs from strangers accusing me of going too far. Random user. Okay, he is a jerk, but ruining his career, that is petty. Keep it private. Anon_guy. You are just bitter because you are a 3. If you were hotter, you wouldn't care. Legal_eagle_wow. Wannabe. Hope you have a good lawyer. Posting private conversations is defamation. I sat with that for a moment. Defamation. I knew enough to know that defamation requires the statement to be false. Nothing I had posted was false. It was his words, his screenshots, his dates. I wasn't lying. I was quoting. But the moral weight of it pressed down on me. Was I responsible for this if Bryce lost his job? Was that my fault? Or was it the fault of the man who wrote the words in the first place? I typed a reply to one of the comments on my post. My fingers flying. Delilah. I did not ask anyone to contact his employer. I did not ask for a witch hunt. I shared my reality, if his reality is incompatible with his professional reputation. That is a conflict he created. Not me. I posted it. It felt right. It felt clean. Then, a new message from Mason popped up on my desktop. Mason Delilah. You need to know the rest. It gets darker. I stared at the screen. How could it get darker? We had hit the spreadsheet. We had hit the cheating. We had hit the mockery of cancer. What was left, Delilah? What is it? Mason. You know how Logan and Trent are terrified right now. It is not just because of the internet. It is because of Bryce. Delilah. Why Mason Bryce isn't just the ringleader. He is the enforcer. That spreadsheet. It is not just for fun. He uses it against them. Delilah. Explain. Mason. About a year ago, Trent wanted to propose to his ex, Sarah, Bryce didn't like her, said she was brand damaging. Trent was going to do it anyway. Bryce told him if he bought the ring, he would send the crush list tab to Sarah. The tab where Trent had rated Sarah's sister a solid 8. My breath caught in my throat. Delilah blackmail Mason leverage. He calls it leverage. He keeps dirt on everyone in the group. That is why no one ever stands up to him. That is why I never said anything until now. He has screenshots of things I said when I was drunk 3 years ago. Things that could get me fired. I looked at the folder on my desktop. The audit. It wasn't just a record of misogyny. It was a record of control. Bryce was running a cult of personality disguised as a friend group. He collected secrets like ammunition. He kept his friends in line by holding a gun to their reputations. Mason. He told Trent yesterday that if he didn't help him spin this story, he would release the logs of Trent complaining about Paige's weight. That is why Trent is panicked. He is trapped. I thought about Paige. I thought about her message burn them down. She didn't know. She didn't know that her boyfriend wasn't just a participant. He was a hostage. A hostage who had also been a willing collaborator until the gun was pointed at him. It was a web. A sticky, poisonous web of fear and validation. And Bryce sat right in the center of it. The spider who truly believed he was a king. Delilah. Why are you telling me this? Mason? If he has dirt on you, why are you helping me? Mason. Because I saw what he wrote about your mom. My mom died 2 years ago. That snapped me out of it. I don't care if he destroys my reputation. I can't stand by and watch him do that to someone else. I felt a tear slip down my cheek. The first time I'd cried since Friday night. Not for Bryce, not for me, but for the warped, heartbreaking reality of it all. Mason was willing to let his own world collapse just to put the evidence in my hands. Delilah. Send me proof of the threats. Send me the text where he tells Trent he'll leak the information. Mason. Sending now. The screenshot came through. Bryce. Tell Paige to shut up. If she talks to Delilah, I'm posting the sister conversation. You know the one. Don't test me. Trent. We're a team. Teams protect the quarterback. Teams protect the quarterback. He saw himself as the star player. Everyone else was just blocking for him. Everyone else was expendable meat to be thrown in front of the linebackers so he could keep his jersey clean. I saved the screenshot. I wasn't just fighting a bad ex-boyfriend anymore. I was dismantling a tyranny. I looked at the clock. It was Sunday morning now. The weekend was over. Monday was coming. And on Monday, Northbridge Metrics would open its doors. HR would check their emails. And Bryce Harlan would find out that in the real world, you cannot blackmail your way out of consequences. I stood up and walked to the window. The city lights were blurring in the distance. Somewhere out there, Carter was sitting in the wreckage of his relationship. Paige was packing a bag. Mason was waiting for the blowback. We were all bleeding. But for the first time, the blood wasn't on our hands. It was on Bryce's, and I was going to make sure the world saw the stains. Monday morning arrived not with the gentle light of a new beginning, but with the jarring, mechanical scream of my phone vibrating against the nightstand. It was 7:15 in the morning. I had not slept well. My dreams had been a fragmented loop of spreadsheets and laughter, a distorted replay of the night at Juniper and Ash. I looked at the screen. Bryce Harlan. I did not answer. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. 2 seconds later, it rang again, and again, and again. He was not calling to apologize. The rhythm of the calls was frantic, aggressive. It was the rhythm of a man who realized the walls were closing in and was looking for a window to smash. I finally picked up on the 5th call. I did not say hello. I just pressed the phone to my ear and listened. "You are destroying my career," Bryce said. There was no preamble. His voice was tight, a high-wire act of panic and rage. "Do you have any idea what is happening right now? HR just flagged my account. My access to the shared drive is revoked. Are you happy?" Delilah. Is this what you wanted? I sat up in bed, pulling the duvet tight around my chest. I did not call HR, Bryce. I posted a picture of what you said about me. It is the same thing, he shouted. the sound distorted in the speaker. You knew people would find me. You knew they would tag Northbridge. You weaponized the internet against me because you could not handle a joke. A joke, I repeated flatly. You called my mother's biopsy a classic attachment issue. It was a private conversation, he screamed. It was between me and the guys. You had no right to see that you violated my privacy. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. I was shaking from the sheer, unadulterated audacity of him. He was the one who had dissected my life for an audience. Yet he was the one claiming violation. I needed professional eyes on this. I needed to know where the line was between truth and liability. I called Elena. Elena was a friend from my college days, a corporate litigator who drank her coffee black and viewed emotions as inefficiencies to be managed. She had warned me about Bryce a year ago, telling me he had shark eyes. I had ignored her then. I was not ignoring her now. Delilah, she said, answering on the first ring. I saw the TikTok. I saw the LinkedIn thread. Please tell me you have not replied to any of his threats in writing. I haven't, I said. He just called me. He says I am ruining his career. He is ruining his own career, Elena said, her voice crisp and reassuring. Listen to me closely. Do not engage in a debate with him. Do not call him names. Do not editorialize. If you post anything else, keep it strictly factual. Truth is the absolute defense against defamation. Did he write the texts? Yes. Do you have the unedited screenshots with the metadata? Yes. Mason sent me everything. Good, Elena said. Then let him threaten. He is not going to sue you. Delilah, discovery would destroy him. If he takes you to court, he has to turn over his phone. He has to turn over that spreadsheet. He knows that. He is trying to scare you into silence because silence is the only asset he has left. He said HR is involved, I said. Good, Elena said again. Northbridge Metrics has a code of conduct. I checked their employee handbook this morning. They have a zero-tolerance policy for harassment and behavior that brings the company into disrepute. He is a liability to them now. But Delilah, yeah, don't wait for them to come to you. Control the narrative before he spins it. He will go into that meeting and say you are a crazy ex-girlfriend who photoshopped the messages. You need to get ahead of the lie. I thanked her and hung up. I walked to my laptop. I opened a new email draft. In the recipient line, I typed the general inquiry address for Northbridge Metrics HR, which I found on their corporate footer. I took a deep breath. Subject: formal complaint regarding harassment and hostile conduct. Bryce Harlan. To the Human Resources Department at Northbridge Metrics. My name is Delilah Cook. I am writing to you not to engage in a personal dispute, but to provide context regarding the information currently circulating on social media involving one of your employees. Bryce Harlan, a vice president in your analytics division, Mr. Harlan has publicly claimed that the statements attributed to him are fabricated or taken out of context. To assist your internal review, I am attaching the original, unedited screenshots of the conversations in question. These documents demonstrate a pattern of behavior that involves the degradation of women, the disclosure of private medical information, and the use of company time and resources to maintain a rating system for partners and colleagues. I am providing this solely for the purpose of truth and clarity. I have no desire to damage your company's reputation, but I will not allow mine to be tarnished by false accusations of fabrication. Sincerely, Delilah Cook. I attached the folder. I did not include the spreadsheet Paige had sent me yet. That felt like a nuclear option I wanted to hold in reserve. I only included the texts where he mocked my job, my mother, and his colleagues. I pressed send. It felt like pushing a boulder off a cliff. Once it was gone, I could not pull it back. By noon, the atmosphere had shifted. The internet moves fast. But corporate legal teams move with the slow, crushing inevitability of a glacier. I received a text from Mason. Mason, it is happening. Security just escorted Bryce out of the building. He is on administrative leave pending an investigation. I stared at the words, administrative leave. It wasn't a firing, not yet. It was the corporate equivalent of a timeout. But for a man like Bryce, who defined his entire existence by his job title and his access key card, it was a castration. My phone rang again. It was Bryce. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text came through. Bryce, you happy now? They walked me out. In front of the whole floor. In front of Sienna. You are a monster. Bryce, this is war. Delilah, you think you can just embarrass me and walk away. I made you. I tolerated you. And this is how you repay me. I blocked the number. I did not feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. I felt the heavy, suffocating weight of his narcissism. He still didn't get it. He truly believed he was the victim. In his mind, the crime wasn't that he had rated me a 3 or mocked my trauma. The crime was that I had turned the lights on. I needed to clear my head. I went to the kitchen to make tea, but my hand was shaking so badly I spilled boiling water on the counter. I wiped it up, breathing steadily, in through the nose, out through the mouth. My phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. It was Paige. Paige, can you talk? Trent is at the gym trying to punch a punching bag into oblivion. I am alone. I called her through the app. Hey, Paige said. Her voice sounded thin, brittle. I heard about Bryce. Yeah, I said. He was escorted out. Good, Paige said. But Delilah, there is more. I have been going through the other tabs on the spreadsheet, the ones I didn't send you yet. What is in them? I asked, leaning against the counter. It wasn't just about rating us for looks or status, Paige said. There is a tab called Testing. It outlines scenarios. Scenarios. Yeah, Paige whispered. Like, Scenario A, withhold affection for 3 days to see if she apologizes for something she didn't do. Or Scenario B, mention a female coworker constantly to test jealousy threshold. They were running A/B tests on us. Delilah. Like we were marketing campaigns. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I remembered the week Bryce had been distant. The week I had driven myself crazy trying to figure out what I had done wrong. I had apologized profusely, cooked his favorite meals, begged him to talk to me. He had finally forgiven me on a Sunday. It hadn't been a mood. It had been a test, and I had passed by showing him exactly how desperate I was. And there is a financial tab, Paige continued, her voice gaining a harder edge. They called it ROI, return on investment. They tracked how much money they spent on dates versus how much access they got, but they also tracked how much they could get us to pay for. What do you mean? There are notes on how to get us to cover the hidden costs, Paige said. Like if I forgot my wallet tactics, or convincing us to put vacations on our cards because they were waiting on a bonus. Bryce has a note next to your name from last Christmas. I gripped the phone tighter. Read it. It says targeting the new OLED TV. Will suggested as a joint gift for the apartment, but she pays up front. Will Venmo my half later. Do not Venmo. I looked at the TV in my living room. The 65-inch OLED screen that sat prominently on the media console. I had paid $2,000 for it. Bryce had promised to send me his $1,000 as soon as his quarterly commission check cleared. He never did. Every time I brought it up, he accused me of being transactional and not trusting him. He stole from me, I said. It wasn't a question. They all did, Paige said. It is part of the game. They call it a stupidity tax. If we are stupid enough to pay. They are smart enough to take it. I hung up the phone. I walked into the living room and looked at the TV. It looked like a black hole. Sucking the light out of the room, it wasn't just emotional abuse. It wasn't just psychological manipulation. It was financial predation. They were grifters in Patagonia vests. My email pinged. I expected a response from Northbridge HR. Instead, it was an email from a brand called FemPower Candles. Hi, Delilah. We have been following your story on TikTok, and we are so inspired by your bravery. We would love to collaborate with you on a Know Your Worth candle line. We can offer you 10% of sales and a free gift box. Let's turn that pain into power. XOXO. I stared at the screen. Turn that pain into power. I felt a surge of disgust so potent it almost made me gag. They wanted to package my humiliation. They wanted to sell my heartbreak for $29.99. I hit delete. I did not reply. I do not sell pain, I said out loud to the empty room. I was not an influencer. I was a nurse. I was a woman who was tired of being lied to. I wasn't doing this for a candle deal. I was doing this because silence was no longer an option. I sat down at my desk to organize my finances. Paige's words about the stupidity tax were ringing in my ears. I needed to see exactly how much Bryce had extracted from me. I logged into my bank account. I started pulling statements from the last 2 years. I saw the Venmo transfers I had sent him for groceries, the plane tickets I had booked on my card, the dinners where he had forgotten his wallet. It added up. $300 here, $500 there, the TV, the weekend trip to Charleston. I was adding the numbers in a spreadsheet of my own when my phone buzzed with a different kind of notification. It was an alert from Experian, the credit monitoring service I had signed up for years ago and mostly ignored. Alert. New inquiry detected on your credit file. I frowned. I hadn't applied for anything. I hadn't bought a car. I hadn't moved apartments. I opened the app. I logged in with my fingerprint. The screen loaded. New account opened Chase Sapphire Reserve. Date yesterday. Status approved. Credit limit $25,000. I froze. Yesterday was Sunday. Yesterday, I was watching my life implode on the internet. I was not applying for a premium travel credit card. I clicked for more details. The address on the application was my address. The social security number was mine. But the email address associated with the account was not mine. It was dcook.finance@gmail.com. I did not own that email address. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't just borrowing money for a TV and not paying it back. This wasn't just being a bad boyfriend. This was identity theft. I thought about the timeline. Bryce had been suspended today. He knew his income was threatened. He knew his reputation was incinerated. And yesterday, when the walls were starting to crack, someone had used my name to secure a $25,000 line of credit. I remembered something Bryce had said to me months ago, when I left my purse in his car while we were running errands. Don't worry, babe. I've got your info memorized anyway, in case of emergencies. I thought he meant my allergies, or my blood type. I grabbed my phone. I dialed the number for the bank's fraud department. As the automated voice told me to press 1 for English, I realized that the genre of my story had shifted again. I wasn't the protagonist of a breakup drama anymore. I was the victim in a crime thriller. And Bryce Harlan wasn't just a narcissist. He was a felon. I pressed 1. My finger was steady. Hello, I said when the representative answered. My name is Delilah Cook. I would like to report a fraudulent account opened in my name. I looked at the TV Bryce had made me pay for. And, I added, my voice cold as the grave, I know exactly who did it. The knock on the door was not the pounding of a desperate man. It was a rhythmic, confident rap. 3 sharp strikes. It was the knock of a neighbor coming to borrow sugar, or a landlord coming to check a leaky faucet. It was the knock of a man who believed he still held the lease to my life. I stood in the center of my living room, the television, the black mirror that had cost me $2,000 and a piece of my dignity, stared back at me. On the screen of my phone, the fraud department's reference number was still glowing. I walked to the door. I did not check the peephole. I knew who it was. I unlocked the deadbolt, not because I wanted to let him in, but because I was done hiding behind reinforced steel. I opened the door. Bryce stood in the hallway. He was wearing a navy blazer over a crisp white t-shirt, the kind of casual Friday look that costs $400 to assemble. His hair was perfectly gelled. He did not look like a man who had been escorted out of his office by security guards just hours ago. He looked like he was arriving for a dinner reservation, but his eyes were different. Usually, Bryce's eyes were scanning the room, assessing the lighting, the crowd, the potential for social climbing. Today, they were fixed on me. They were hard, glassy, and terrified. "Can I come in?" he asked. His voice was low. modulated to a frequency of reasonable calm. "No," I said. I stood in the threshold, my hand gripping the door frame. "Say what you need to say from the hall." He sighed, a long, disappointed exhale through his nose. He looked down the hallway to ensure none of my neighbors were watching, then looked back at me with a pained expression. "Delilah, please, I do not want to do this in public. We are adults. We can have a civilized conversation." "Civilized?" I repeated. "Is that what you call it?" He stepped forward, just an inch, testing the boundary. I did not flinch, but I did not move back. I held my ground. "I lost my job," he said. He delivered the news with the gravity of a cancer diagnosis. He waited for the reaction. He waited for the gasp, the hand to the mouth, the instinctive nurturing reflex that he had trained in me for 2 years. He expected me to say, "Oh my God, Bryce, I am so sorry." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had called my career babysitting. "That is a consequence," I said. "Not an apology." Bryce blinked. The script had failed. He shifted his weight to his left foot. He unbuttoned his blazer. He was recalculating. "You are angry," he said, nodding as if he were a therapist acknowledging a patient's breakthrough. "I get that. You have every right to be angry about the texts. They were crude. They were insensitive. I own that." "You own nothing," I said. "You rented everything, including my trust." "Delilah, look at the big picture," he said, stepping closer again, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do you know what you have done? It is not just me. It is the firm. It is the team. Innocent people are getting dragged into this because you decided to go nuclear. You are hurting people who have nothing to do with us." He was good. He was so incredibly good at this. He was taking the wreckage he had caused and trying to hand me the bill for the cleanup. He wanted me to feel the weight of his collateral damage. "I did not drag anyone into anything," I said. "I posted 3 screenshots. The internet did the rest. If your reputation was so fragile that 3 pictures destroyed it, then it wasn't a reputation. It was a disguise." "You are destroying lives," he hissed, his composure cracking just a fraction. "Trent is suicidal. Paige left him. Do you feel good about that? Is that the kind of woman you are? Vengeful?" "I am the kind of woman who reads the fine print," I said. I watched him closely. I was looking for the tell. I was looking for the twitch in his jaw, the blink rate, the way he held his hands. I needed to see if he knew that I knew. "What do you want, Bryce?" I asked. "You didn't come here to tell me about Trent. You came here to save yourself. So tell me, what is the ask?" He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the perfect gel. "I need you to issue a statement, just a short one. Say that we talked, that the texts were taken out of context, that it was an inside joke gone wrong. If you do that, the company might reconsider the suspension. I can salvage this. We can salvage this." "We," I said. "Yes, we," he said, his eyes widening with a glimmer of hope. "Delilah, I know I messed up, but we had a plan. We were building something. I was going to take us to Europe next spring. I was looking at rings. I was getting ready to upgrade us." Upgrade. The word hung in the air between us, smelling of rot. "Is that why you opened the credit card?" I asked. The silence that followed was absolute. It was not a confused silence. It was a frozen silence. It was the silence of a deer hearing the snap of a twig and realizing the hunter is already aiming. Bryce froze. His hand, which had been reaching out toward me in a gesture of pleading, stopped in midair. His mouth remained slightly open, but no sound came out. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. He blinked. "What?" he said. His voice was too high. "The Chase Sapphire Reserve," I said, reciting the name of the card like it was a scripture. "Opened yesterday, Sunday morning, while I was drinking coffee and reading comments about how much you despise me. $25,000 limit, my social security number, your backup email address." I watched his face. I saw the gears grinding. I saw the panic flare, and then be instantly smothered by the need to spin. He looked down at his shoes, then back up at me, a look of manufactured innocence plastered across his features. "Oh," he said, letting out a breathless chuckle. "That, Delilah, you found out." "I found out," I said. "I was going to surprise you," he said. He smiled. It was a terrifying, dead smile. "I wanted to book the Europe trip. I wanted it to be perfect. But my cash flow is tied up in investments right now, and I didn't want to use the joint account because you would see the transaction. I applied for the card so I could buy the tickets and the ring. I was going to tell you as soon as the card arrived, it was for us." He looked at me with wide, imploring eyes. He was begging me to buy the lie. He was begging me to believe that he had committed a felony out of romance. "You forged my identity to buy a ring," I asked. "That is your story." "It is not forgery if it is for our future," he said, stepping forward again, invading the doorway. "It is partnership. I was taking the initiative. I wanted to give you the 10 out of 10 experience you deserve. I was trying to fix things. Delilah, I was trying to be the provider." "You are lying," I said. "I am not," he said, his voice rising. "Why are you so cynical? Why do you always assume the worst? This is why we have problems. You never trust my vision. You get stuck in the weeds of legality and details, and you miss the intent. The intent was fraud," I said. "The intent was to secure a line of credit before you lost your salary. The intent was to use my credit score because you knew yours was about to take a hit. You were not buying a ring, Bryce. You were buying a lifeboat." He stared at me. The nice guy mask was slipping. The edges were curling up, revealing the sneer underneath. "You think you are so smart," he muttered. "You think you have it all figured out." "I don't think," I said. I know because I have the alert on my phone. I know because I spoke to the fraud department 10 minutes ago. I know because I know you." I took a breath. The air in the hallway smelled of dust and his expensive cologne, a scent that used to make my heart race but now made my stomach turn. "You don't love me, Bryce," I said. My voice was quiet, steady, and devoid of tears. "You never loved me. You manage me. You manage me like a portfolio. You manage me like a project. You optimize me. You audit me. And when the numbers don't add up, you try to leverage my credit to cover your losses." Bryce's face went red, a deep, ugly flush that started at his neck and crawled up to his hairline. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "You manage me," I repeated. "That is all this was, a management strategy." Something in him snapped. The facade of the polished executive dissolved. The man who cared about integrity and leadership vanished. In his place stood the man from the group chat, the man who laughed at biopsies, the man who rated women like livestock. "You are unbelievable," he spat. "I gave you everything. I elevated you. I introduced you to people who actually matter. I tried to drag you up to my level, but you are just determined to stay in the mud." He leaned in, his face inches from mine. I could smell the coffee on his breath. "You know what?" he said, his voice trembling with genuine hatred. "I was right. I was right from the beginning. You are a 3. You are a solid, boring, uninspired 3 out of 10. You have no vision. You have no gratitude. You are nothing without me." He screamed the number, 3. He threw it at me like a stone, expecting it to break the glass. He expected me to crumble. He expected me to cry, to apologize, to beg him to rate me higher. I looked at him. I looked at his red face, his bulging vein, his desperate eyes, and I felt lighter. I felt the last tether snap. I didn't cry. I didn't scream back. I smiled. It was a small smile, a genuine, soft curving of my lips. It was the smile of a person who has finally found the keys they had been looking for all morning. "Thank you," I said. Bryce froze. He pulled back, confused. "What? Thank you," I said again, for saying it to my face. Finally, I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. I was wondering I said. I was wondering if maybe I was crazy. I was wondering if maybe the texts were just a joke, like you said. I was wondering if maybe there was still a part of you that actually respected me. I looked him up and down. But now I know, I said. You really do think I am a number. You really do think you own me. And because you said it, right here, right now, to my face, I don't have to doubt myself anymore. I don't have to wonder if I am the villain. Bryce stared at me. He looked horrified. He realized, in that moment, that his greatest weapon, his judgment, had no ammunition left. He had fired his biggest shot, and I was still standing. You are insane, he whispered. You are actually psychotic. Maybe, I said, but I am a psychotic with a 750 credit score and a police report number. I stepped back and started to close the door. Wait, Bryce said, jamming his foot in the jamb. Delilah? Wait, the police report. You didn't... I did, I said. Identity theft is a serious crime. Bryce, it is not a guy talk issue. It is a federal issue. You can't do that, he said, his voice cracking. I am your boyfriend. We can fix this. I will pay it back. I swear. You aren't my boyfriend, I said. You are a 3 out of 10, and I don't date 3s. I kicked his expensive Italian leather shoe out of the door frame. He stumbled back. Delilah, he shouted. I slammed the door. I turned the deadbolt. Click. I engaged the chain. Slide. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other side. I could hear him muttering curses. I could hear him pacing. Then, I heard the elevator ding. I heard his footsteps recede. I heard the heavy doors slide shut. I was alone. I walked back to the living room. I looked at the folder on my laptop. The audit. I had won the battle in the hallway. I had stripped him of his mask. But the war wasn't over. He still had the spreadsheet. He still had the leverage over Trent and the others. He still thought he could talk his way out of the suspension, but he didn't know about the police report. He didn't know that I had already sent the fraud affidavit to the bank, and he didn't know that I was done playing defense. I sat down at my computer. I opened the email from Paige, the one with the full spreadsheet. I looked at the tabs, current assets, depreciating assets, prospects, and then I saw a tab I hadn't noticed before. It was hidden at the very end, scrolled off the screen. It was labeled Exit Strategies. I clicked on it, and there, in row 4, under Delilah C., was a plan so detailed, so cruel, and so specific that it made the 3 out of 10 rating look like a compliment. I read it, and then I started to type. The morning sun did not bring warmth. It brought paperwork. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by the banal, terrifying administrative debris of a life being stolen. I had a pen in my hand and a stack of printed forms from the Federal Trade Commission. I was not screaming. I was not crying. I was filling out boxes. Identity theft affidavit. Case number 49201. Victim name Delilah Cook. Suspect name Bryce Harlan. There is a specific kind of quiet that comes with legal action. It is not the silence of shock. It is the silence of a library or a bank vault. It is the silence of consequences accumulating like snow. I placed a fraud alert on my credit file with Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I uploaded the police report I had filed online at 3 a.m. I contacted the credit card issuer and disputed the inquiry. I did not need a baseball bat to break Bryce's windows. I did not need to slash his tires. I just needed to be a citizen with a printer and a valid claim. The system, which Bryce loved so much when it worked in his favor, was a cold, impartial machine, and I had just fed it his name. My laptop chimed. It was a notification from Mason. Mason, I exported the archives, the old stuff. Before the auto-delete was turned on, it is a large file. I clicked the download link. The file was nearly 2 gigabytes. I opened it. It wasn't just a chat log. It was a library of cruelty. I had seen the insults. I had seen the ratings. But what I was looking at now was something far more sinister. It was a manual. I scrolled to a conversation from November of last year. This was right after I had received a small raise at the recovery center, a 3% bump that I was proud of. I remembered coming home and telling Bryce. He had smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "That is great, babe." But in the chat, dated 10 minutes after I told him, he had written Bryce, "She got a raise. Peanuts, obviously, but she is acting like she just made partner." It is annoying. Trent, is she getting cocky? Bryce, a little. I need to recalibrate. If she thinks she is financially independent, she starts getting ideas about equity in the relationship. I'm going to remind her about that fender bender she had last year. Make her feel like a liability again. Keeps the confidence low. Low confidence equals high retention. Low confidence equals high retention. I stared at the screen. The air in my apartment seemed to vanish. It wasn't an accident. Every time I felt good about myself, and he made a harmless joke that took the wind out of my sails. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a strategic deployment. He was engineering my insecurity. He was artificially suppressing my self-esteem to ensure I wouldn't leave him. He wasn't just rating me. He was actively managing my stock price down so he could keep buying me at a discount. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to close my eyes. I had thought I was fighting a narcissist. I realize now I was fighting a predator who used psychological warfare as a hobby. My phone buzzed. It was Paige. "Paige, you need to see this. I found it in Trent's old backups." She sent a series of screenshots. They were from 2 years ago. "Bryce Trent, you need to cut Sarah loose. She is dead weight. Trent, I can't just dump her. Man, she is going through a hard time. Bryce, if you don't do it, I will show her the spreadsheet. I will show her where you rated her sister. I will blow up your spot. Do it by Friday or I hit send." I read it twice. Bryce wasn't just abusing us. He was abusing them. He was using the shared complicity of the group chat to keep his friends in line. It was a classic gang enforcement tactic. You make everyone commit a crime so that no one can go to the police. He had made Trent rate Sarah's sister so he would have leverage over him forever. The network wasn't built on friendship. It was built on mutually assured destruction. I sat back in my chair. The pieces of the puzzle weren't just fitting together. They were locking into place with the sound of a prison cell closing. This wasn't a story about a bad boyfriend. This was a story about a localized tyranny, a micro-cult run by a man in a Patagonia vest. My phone rang. The screen displayed a name I had been expecting, but dreading. Carter Wynn. I picked up. "Hello, Carter?" I said. "It is done." Carter said. His voice sounded paper-thin, like it might tear if he spoke too loudly. I ended it. "I am sorry," I said, and I was. I was sorry that the truth was so ugly. "She didn't deny the lunches," Carter said. "She admitted she was flirting. She admitted she liked the attention. She said Bryce made her feel powerful because he was rating her so high." "Of course," I said. "That is how he gets you. He inflates you before he pops you." "She screamed at me," Carter continued. "She said you were jealous. She said you were a bitter, average woman who was trying to tear down a high-value woman because you couldn't compete." She used his words. Delilah. She called herself high value. She has absorbed the vocabulary. I felt a sharp pang of pity for Sienna. She was still in the matrix. She thought she was the winner because she was a 9. She didn't realize that a 9 is just a number waiting to become a 7 as soon as she gains 5 pounds or asks for a commitment. "She blamed me," I asked. "She blamed you." "She blamed me for looking." "She blamed everyone but herself and Bryce," Carter said. "But I told her I saw the spreadsheet. I told her I saw the pending acquisition tag. I asked her if she wanted to be an acquisition or a wife. She didn't have an answer. There was a long pause on the line. "I need the rest of it, Delilah," Carter said. "I know you held some back. I know you were trying to be kind. But if I am going to walk away from a wedding, I need to know everything." I looked at the folder on my desktop. There were files I hadn't sent him. Files where Bryce discussed Sienna's expiration date and how he would eventually trade her in for a 22-year-old intern once she hit 30. "I will send it," I said. not to hurt her, but because you have a right to know the architecture of the trap you just escaped." "Thank you," Carter said. "And Delilah, you are not a 3. You are the only person in this entire mess who is acting like a 10. He hung up. I sent the files. I did not feel vindictive. I felt like a coroner releasing a report to the family. It was grim, but it was necessary. An hour later, my email pinged with a notification that made my spine stiffen. From HR_investigation, northbridgemetrics.com, subject urgent request for statement regarding Bryce Harlan. I opened it. "Dear Ms. Cook, we have received your complaint and the accompanying documentation. We take these allegations of harassment, misuse of company resources, and reputational damage extremely seriously. We have initiated a formal internal investigation into Mr. Harlan's conduct. We would like to invite you to submit a formal written statement detailing the timeline of events, specifically regarding the creation and distribution of the rating documents during company hours. Your cooperation would be invaluable in helping us maintain a safe and respectful workplace. Sincerely, Patricia Vance, VP of Human Resources." I read the email 3 times. They weren't dismissing me. They weren't calling me a crazy ex. They were asking for my testimony. Bryce had built his entire identity around his career at Northbridge. He wore the company fleece. He quoted the CEO. He lived for the quarterly reviews. And now, the institution he worshipped was turning its gaze on him. And they were asking me to hold the magnifying glass. I started to draft my response. I kept it clinical. I referenced the timestamps on the screenshots that aligned with his work hours. I referenced the use of company jargon in his misogyny. I was not emotional. I was an auditor. As I was typing, another email arrived. It was from a personal Gmail address, from Bryce. Harlan88gmail.com. Subject truce. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the mouse. I knew I shouldn't open it. I knew I should forward it straight to his HR department. But curiosity is a powerful drug. I clicked. The email was long. It was dense. And it was written in a language that I recognized immediately. It was the language of Instagram therapy. It was the weaponized vocabulary of healing. Delilah, I have been doing a lot of reflection in the last 24 hours. I have been sitting with my shadow self, and I realize now that my behavior was a projection of my own deep-seated insecurities. I used the rating system as a maladaptive coping mechanism to deal with my fear of abandonment. We have both hurt each other. You violated my privacy by posting my safe space conversations, and I hurt you with my words. We are both victims of a toxic cycle. I want to break that cycle. I want us to heal. I am willing to drop the issue of the credit card application, which was a misunderstanding born of love, if you are willing to issue a joint statement saying that we are resolving this privately. We can frame it as a miscommunication and move forward with grace. Let's not let the internet define us. Let's choose growth. Bryce. I stared at the screen. My mouth fell open slightly. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. He was trying to equate his systematic, years-long campaign of abuse with my 3 days of truth-telling. He was using words like shadow self and maladaptive coping mechanism to sanitize the fact that he was a bully and a thief. He was offering to drop the credit card issue, a federal crime he committed, as if he were doing me a favor. He wasn't sorry. He was rebranding. He thought I was stupid. He thought that if he used enough soft, therapeutic words, I would forget the hard, sharp edges of his cruelty. He thought he could gaslight me one last time by calling it a misunderstanding born of love. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my chest. I hit reply. I did not write a paragraph. I did not engage with his shadow self. I did not acknowledge his offer of a truce. I wrote one sentence. I do not co-sign fiction to help you sleep at night. I hit send. Then I forwarded his email to Patricia Vance at Northbridge HR with a note, additional evidence of Mr. Harlan attempting to intimidate a witness and characterize fraudulent financial activity as a misunderstanding. I closed my laptop. The room was quiet. The sun was going down, casting long shadows across the floor. I looked at the empty space on the wall where a picture of us used to hang. I had taken it down on Saturday. The nail was still there. I walked over to the nail. I put my finger on the sharp point. It hurt, but it was a clean pain. It was the pain of reality. I was done being managed. I was done being calibrated. I was done being a line item in a spreadsheet. I walked to the kitchen and poured the rest of the cold coffee down the sink. I watched the brown liquid swirl and disappear into the drain. I washed the cup. I dried it. I put it away in the cupboard. I was ready for the end. I was ready for the fallout. Because for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't waiting for Bryce to tell me who I was. I had looked at the data. I had run the numbers, and I had come to my own conclusion. I was the one holding the pen, and I was about to sign his termination letter. The silence in the hallway of Silver Pine Recovery Center was different from the silence in my apartment. At home, the silence was heavy, loaded with the echo of slamming doors and the ghost of a man who had treated me like an unchecked box on a to-do list. Here, the silence was industrious. It was the sound of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum, the soft beep of monitors, and the collective breath of people trying to rebuild their lives one muscle movement at a time. I walked into room 304. Mrs. Gable was sitting by the window, staring at a squirrel running along the power line. She had suffered a stroke 6 weeks ago. When she arrived, she could not speak. Now, she could say coffee and daughter. To Bryce, that would have been a low-yield metric. To me, it was a symphony. "Good morning, Delilah," she said. The words were slow, heavy with effort, but they were there. "Good morning, Margaret," I said, checking her chart. "Ready to work on that grip strength?" She nodded. I took her hand. My hands were unmanicured. My nails were cut short. There was no gel polish, no high aesthetic maintenance that Bryce had demanded for his corporate dinners. These were working hands, and as Mrs. Gable squeezed my fingers, her eyes lighting up with the triumph of a small victory, I realized that these hands were worth more than any rating in a spreadsheet. I spent the next 8 hours in the rhythm of the real world. I wiped sweat from foreheads. I celebrated a patient taking 3 steps without a walker. I listened to a 19-year-old boy cry because he missed his dog, and I did not call it an attachment issue. I called his mom and arranged a FaceTime visit with the golden retriever. At 4 o'clock, Dr. Aris called me into his office. He was the medical director, a man with messy gray hair who wore socks with sandals and probably had a social credit score of 0 in Bryce's world. "Delilah," he said, shuffling some papers. "I saw the news. Not the internet stuff. I don't read that garbage. I mean your shift reports." I tensed. I was waiting for the blowback. I was waiting for him to say that my personal drama was a distraction. "You picked up 3 extra shifts last month," he said. "You handled the intake for the Johnson case when the night nurse called out, and the families, they ask for you by name." He took off his glasses and cleaned them on his tie. "We need a new lead care coordinator," he said. "It is more admin, but you would still have patient contact. It comes with a 12% raise and a parking spot that isn't under the leaking pipe." I stared at him. A week ago, I had been told I was a 3 out of 10 because I lacked ambition. I had been told my job was babysitting. "I would be honored," I said. "Good." "Doctor." Aris grunted. "You are steady. Cook. In this business, steady is the only thing that matters. Flashy burns out. Steady saves lives." I walked out of the building at 5:30. The air smelled of rain and exhaust, and it was the sweetest thing I had ever smelled. I sat in my car, gripped the steering wheel, and breathed. I was not a placeholder. I was the lead care coordinator, and I had earned it without a single strategy lunch or manipulative text message. Friday night came, but there was no anxiety. There was no pressure to look brand appropriate. There was no fear that my outfit would lower my weekly average. My friends, my real friends, the ones Bryce had slowly isolated me from over 2 years, had organized what they called a 3 out of 10 night. I showed up at Sarah's apartment wearing oversized gray sweatpants and a t-shirt that said, "I'm with Stupid," with an arrow pointing up at my own face. My hair was in a messy bun, the kind that wasn't styled to look messy, but was actually just messy. When I walked in, Sarah was wearing a bathrobe and Crocs. Maddie had drawn a unibrow on her face with eyeliner. "Welcome to the bottom of the barrel," Sarah yelled, handing me a paper plate with a slice of pepperoni pizza that was visibly greasy. "We have box wine, we have Cheetos, and the lighting is unflattering fluorescent. It is a solid 2 out of 10 in here." We laughed. We laughed until our sides ached. It wasn't the polite, performative laughter of the dinners at Juniper and Ash. It wasn't the cruel, exclusionary laughter of the boys' group chat. It was a release. It was the sound of women reclaiming the insults that had been used to bind them. We played Scrabble. I played the word unmanaged on a triple word score. 30 points, Maddie said, tallying the score. "That is high efficiency." "Don't use that word," I warned, throwing a Cheeto at her. Around midnight, as the wine box was gurgling its last breath, the room went quiet. We were sitting on the floor, surrounded by crumbs. "You know," Sarah said, picking at a loose thread on the carpet, "he hated us. He told you we were holding you back. He said we were low status." "I know," I said. "But we are the ones who are here," Sarah said softly. "We are the ones who helped you pack his stuff. We are the ones who are eating pizza with you on a Friday night." I looked around the room. I looked at their faces scrubbed clean of makeup, tired from their jobs, imperfect and beautiful. "He called this boring," I said. "He said stability was boring." "Stability isn't boring," Maddie said, resting her head on my shoulder. "Stability is safety. You can't sleep if you are constantly being audited." I realized then that Bryce had tricked me. He had convinced me that anxiety was passion. He had convinced me that the constant need to impress him was love. But love wasn't a performance review. Love was pizza on the floor and friends who didn't care if you had a unibrow. A few days later, on a Tuesday afternoon, I met Carter Wynn. We chose a coffee shop on the edge of town, far away from the sleek downtown bars where Bryce and Sienna used to hold court. It was a place with mismatched chairs and ceramic mugs that didn't match the saucers. Carter looked tired. He was thinner than he had been in the photos, and he had stopped shaving every day. He looked like a man who was waking up from a long coma. "She is still texting me," Carter said, staring into his black coffee. "She says I overreacted. She says the rating was just a game and I am being insecure." "They don't change the script," I said. "It is always your fault for noticing the knife in your back." "I blocked her this morning," he said. "Finally. Good." We sat in silence for a moment. It wasn't a romantic silence. There was no spark between us. No lingering glances. We were two soldiers from opposing sides of a war who had met in the middle of the battlefield to compare scars. We were survivors of the same specific, bizarre trauma. "Do you miss him?" Carter asked. He looked up, his eyes searching mine for permission to be honest. "Because I miss her, and I hate myself for it. I miss who I thought she was. I miss the version of him that didn't exist," I said. "I miss the guy who brought me soup when I was sick. But then I remember that while he was heating the soup, he was texting his friends that I was being needy. So no, I don't miss him. I grieve the time I wasted on a hologram." Carter nodded. He took a sip of coffee. "I am going to take a break," he said. "From dating, from women, from everything. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be a high-value partner for someone else." "Me too," I said. "I am going to be single, and it feels 10 out of 10. He smiled. It was a real smile, reaching his eyes. "Touché." We parted ways outside the shop. We didn't hug, we just shook hands. It felt appropriate. It was a deal made between two people who were reclaiming their autonomy. I did start dating again, eventually, but it was different. I went on a date with a guy named David, a teacher I met at the library. He was nice. He asked questions. He listened. But 10 minutes into the date, he made a joke. He said, "You are drinking that latte pretty fast. Are we in a rush?" It was a harmless comment, probably, but my body reacted before my brain did. My stomach tightened. My guard went up. "I drink coffee how I drink coffee," I said. My voice was sharp, a little too loud. David looked surprised. "Whoa, sorry. Just teasing." "I don't like teasing about my habits," I said. I put the cup down. "It is a boundary. If you need to critique how I eat or drink, this isn't going to work." David didn't get angry. He didn't call me crazy. He just nodded. "Okay," he said. "Fair enough. I won't do it again." And he didn't. I didn't go out with David again. Not because he was bad, but because I realized I wasn't ready to let anyone observe me that closely yet. But the victory wasn't the date. The victory was the boundary. I had spoken up. I had refused to be small. Then came the text from Mason. It arrived late one night while I was reading a book, a real book, made of paper, not a screen. "Mason, hey. Delilah, I know I am probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to tell you I left the group chat. I blocked them all. I am seeing a therapist to figure out why I watched it happen for so long without saying anything. I am sorry. I should have spoken up when he made the comment about your mom. That haunts me." I looked at the message. I thought about the anger I had felt toward the silent bystanders, the ones who laughed, or the ones who just watched. I typed back, "I didn't want to be cruel, but I didn't want to be fake, Delilah. I appreciate you telling me. Mason, and thank you for the evidence. It saved me. But you are right. You should have spoken up sooner. Silence is an endorsement. I hope you find what you are looking for in therapy. Good luck." I didn't say, "It's okay," because it wasn't okay, but I forgave him. Not for his sake, but so I didn't have to carry the weight of hating him anymore. I archived the chat. I put Mason in the past, right where he belonged. The internet was still churning. My TikTok notifications were still coming in, though slower now. People were still debating, still analyzing, still projecting their own traumas onto my story. User 88. She is a hero, user 99. She is just as toxic as him. I stopped reading. I deleted the TikTok app from my phone. I turned off notifications for Instagram. I didn't deactivate my accounts. I refused to hide, but I stopped feeding the beast. I stopped checking to see if Bryce had resurfaced. I stopped checking if Northbridge Metrics was being tagged. I chose my life. I chose the smell of the recovery center. I chose the taste of cheap pizza with Sarah and Maddie. I chose the quiet mornings in my apartment where no one was raiding my bedhead. And then, on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the explosion, the mail arrived. It was a thick envelope. The return address was embossed in heavy, corporate black ink. Northbridge Metrics, Human Resources Department, confidential. I stood in my kitchen, holding the envelope. The paper felt heavy, like it contained something denser than just words. This was it. This was the conclusion of the investigation. This was the answer to the question of whether a spreadsheet was stronger than a corporate policy. I used a knife to slit the envelope open. I pulled out the letter. The paper was crisp, high-quality bond. I unfolded it. Dear Ms. Cook, we are writing to inform you that the internal investigation regarding the conduct of Mr. Bryce Harlan has been concluded. I took a breath. My heart beat once, hard, against my ribs. I read the next line, and then I read it again. And for the first time in weeks, my shoulders dropped. The tension that had been holding my spine rigid, the invisible armor I had been wearing since that night at Juniper and Ash, finally fell away. I put the letter on the table. It was over. The letter from Northbridge Metrics was not just a notification. It was an autopsy report of a career that had died of its own arrogance. I sat at my kitchen table, the paper smoothed out in front of me, and read the conclusion of the investigation. It was clinical. It was cold. It was devoid of the emotion that had fueled the last week of my life. Based on the forensic analysis of company devices and the testimony of multiple witnesses, the letter read, Northbridge Metrics has found Mr. Harlan in violation of our code of conduct, specifically regarding the creation of a hostile work environment, sexual harassment, and the misuse of proprietary company data for personal leverage. I had expected them to fire him for the PR nightmare. I had expected them to cut him loose because the internet was loud, but the letter went on, and that was where the ground truly shifted beneath my feet. The investigation revealed that the rating system was not limited to personal acquaintances. Mr. Harlan maintained a separate tab within the spreadsheet titled Internal Resources, where he cataloged and rated female employees, interns, and superiors based on physical appearance and exploitability. I put the letter down. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Paige. It wasn't just the girlfriends. He had been doing it at work. He had been walking the halls of Northbridge, sitting in meetings, and evaluating his female colleagues not on their competence, but on their exploitability. My phone rang. It was Patricia Vance from HR. "Ms. Cook?" she said. Her voice was professional, but there was a tightness to it, a suppressed anger that I recognized immediately. "I wanted to confirm you received the letter." "I did," I said. "I cannot share specific details due to privacy laws," Patricia said, "but I think it is important for you to know that after you sent your email, 3 other women from our office came forward. One was an intern he had threatened to give a bad review to if she didn't go to dinner with him. Another was a manager he had been undermining." "The spreadsheet," I said. "Yes," Patricia said. "We found it on his work drive. He thought deleting it from the cloud was enough, but our IT forensics team recovered the local cache. The Internal Resources tab was extensive." I felt a chill. I had thought I was exposing a bad boyfriend. I realized now I had lanced a boil that had been infecting an entire ecosystem. "Mr. Harlan's employment has been terminated effective immediately," Patricia continued. "For cause, meaning no severance, no references, and we have issued a formal apology to the internal staff affected." "Thank you," I said. "No," Patricia said. "Thank you. He was up for a promotion next month. If you hadn't sent those screenshots, he would have been managing a team of 20 people. You stopped that." We hung up. I sat in the silence. I didn't feel happy. I felt a deep, resonant relief. The system worked. It took a while, and it required me to set myself on fire to light the fuse. But it worked. 2 days later, the second shoe dropped. This one was legal. I received a call from the fraud investigator at Chase Bank. "Ms. Cook," the investigator said, "we have completed our review of the unauthorized inquiry and the account opening. We have verified the IP address used for the application, and it matches the residential IP address of a Mr. Bryce Harlan, who is listed as a former occupant of your address." "He was my boyfriend," I said. "We also recovered the email verification sent to the secondary address," the investigator said. "It is a clear-cut case of identity theft. We have closed the account. The inquiry will be removed from your credit report within 30 days. You have zero liability for the annual fee or any potential charges." "And Bryce?" I asked. "We are required by federal law to refer confirmed cases of identity fraud over a certain dollar amount to the authorities," the investigator said. "Whatever happens next is between Mr. Harlan and the legal system, but as far as your credit is concerned, it is like it never happened. It is like it never happened. If only that were true for the memories. If only I could dispute the last 2 years of my life and have them scrubbed from my history because they were fraudulent. But credit scores are easier to fix than hearts. I thought it was over. I really did. But Bryce Harlan was a man who needed to have the last word. He needed to control the ending. I was walking out of my apartment building on a Thursday evening, carrying a bag of trash to the dumpster in the alley. It was mundane. It was normal. I was wearing sweatpants. "Delilah," I froze. He was standing near the brick wall of the building, half in the shadow. He wasn't wearing the Patagonia vest. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a hoodie and jeans. He looked smaller. He looked like a version of himself that had been deflated. I gripped the trash bag. "You are not supposed to be here," I said. "I can call the police right now. The report is already on file." "I am leaving," he said quickly, holding up his hands. "I am moving back to Ohio, to my parents' place. I needed to see you before I went." "Why?" I asked. "To rate my trash taking out skills. Is this a 4 out of 10 performance? He winced. Stop. Please. I am not that guy anymore. You were that guy 3 days ago, I said. He stepped out of the shadows. His face was pale. I lost everything. Delilah, the job, the apartment. The car is getting repossessed because I can't make the payments without the salary. My friends won't answer my texts. Even my mom is looking at me differently. That is what happens, I said. It is called gravity. You climb on top of people to get high, and when they move, you fall. I just wanted to say, he started, his voice taking on that smooth, practiced cadence I used to mistake for sincerity. I wanted to say that I forgive you. My jaw dropped. You forgive me? Yes, he said, nodding earnestly. You reacted out of pain. You didn't mean to ruin my life. You just wanted to be heard, and I respect that. We were both toxic to each other. We both made mistakes. I am choosing to walk away with love. Delilah, I am choosing to be the bigger person. He was doing it again, even in the wreckage of his life. Standing by a dumpster in a hoodie. He was trying to reframe the narrative so he could be the hero. He was trying to grant me absolution for a crime I didn't commit. He wanted me to say, thank you. Bryce, I am sorry too. He wanted to leave with a tie game. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had shared a bed with. I looked at the man who had stolen my identity to buy a ring for a future he didn't even want. Bryce, I said. Yeah, he asked, hopeful. You don't get to forgive me, I said, because I didn't do anything to you. The truth did it to you. I just held up the mirror. And you are not the bigger person, I continued, my voice steady and hard. You are just a person who got caught. You are not moving to Ohio because you are choosing a new path. You are running away because you burned down your village. I took a step closer to him. And one last thing, I said. You keep saying I ruined us. You keep saying the internet ruined us. But you are wrong. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. You didn't lose me because of the internet, I said. You didn't lose me because of the screenshots. You lost me because you didn't see me as a person. You saw me as an appliance. And the thing about appliances, Bryce, is that eventually they get unplugged. I threw the trash bag into the dumpster. It landed with a heavy, satisfying thud. Goodbye, I said. I turned around and walked back to the door. Delilah, he called out. I still think you are great. I really do. I didn't look back. I let the heavy metal door slam shut behind me. I locked it. I took the elevator up to my floor. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I felt completely, wonderfully empty. The fallout continued to settle in the weeks that followed, like dust after a demolition. Paige sent me a text one afternoon. Paige, I did it. I got my own place. It is small and the water pressure is terrible. But it is mine, and I blocked Trent. He tried to tell me the spreadsheet was just a joke until the very end. He never got it. Delilah, proud of you. Paige, enjoy the bad water pressure. It feels like freedom. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Logan and Trent had stopped speaking. Without Bryce there to enforce the hierarchy, their friendship collapsed. They realized they didn't actually like each other. They just liked the validation of being in the inner circle. Once the circle was broken, they were just two guys with nothing in common but a history of being awful. Carter Wynn sent me a message a month later. It was a photo of a drafting table, covered in blueprints for a new house. Carter, starting over, new designs, no acquisitions, just structure. Thank you for telling the truth. Delilah, it hurts, but it is the kind of hurt that heals. It is the light. It is the light. He was right. The truth was harsh, blinding, and hot. But it was the only thing that could kill the mold that Bryce had cultivated in the dark. And then, there was the final night. It was a Tuesday, a random, boring Tuesday in November. I was in my apartment. I had ordered Thai food pad CU, extra spicy. I was wearing a pair of flannel pajama pants that were 3 years old and had a hole in the knee. My hair was in a clip. I had zero makeup on. I sat on my couch. The expensive OLED TV was playing a sitcom in the background. but the volume was low. I picked up my phone. I scrolled through my camera roll. I saw the pictures of me and Bryce from a year ago. I looked happy in them, but I looked closely at my eyes. There was a tension there, a fear, a question asking, is this okay? Am I doing this right? I selected the photos, all of them. Delete, delete, delete. I emptied the recently deleted folder. I put the phone face down on the table. I took a bite of my noodles. They were perfect, salty, spicy, warm. I looked around my living room. It was quiet. No one was judging me. No one was calculating the ROI of my dinner. No one was wondering if my pajamas were brand damaging. I was alone, and I was whole. I thought about the rating, 3 out of 10. I laughed. A soft, genuine chuckle that bubbled up from my chest. I wasn't a 3. I wasn't a 10. I wasn't a number at all. I was a complex, messy, ambitious, tired, happy human being. I was a nurse who saved lives. I was a friend who fought for her people. I was a woman who had taken down a tyrant with nothing but a screenshot and a spine. I curled my legs up under me. I am not a 3, I whispered to the empty room. I am not a score. I am a person, and anyone who looks at love like a scorecard never deserved to be in the game with me. I picked up the remote and turned up the volume. The sitcom was funny, the noodles were good, the rent was paid, and for the first time in forever, the math finally worked out. Thank you so much for listening to this story on Leona Revenge Stories. If you enjoyed watching Delilah take back her power, please leave a comment down below, telling us where you are listening from. We would love to hear your thoughts on the story. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. See you in the next one.